1. Introduction. RAWSEP view the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove, and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, or RAWSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RAWSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025, and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives, and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Episode 57DHXXK September 17, 2025 Fired CDC Director to testify about her clash with RFK Junior. In episode 57DHXXK, one fired CDC Director to testify about her clash with RFK Junior. 2 headlines, 3 headlines about Trump, Kirk, and lack of gun control main content. One fired CDC Director to testify about her clash with RFK Junior. The September 17, 2025 hearing before the Senate Health Committee promises to be a referendum on the Health Secretary RFK Junior leadership and expose a rocky time at the Public Health Agency of America. Susan Monarez, the former head of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, is set to appear before the Senate Health Committee on Wednesday. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. The New York Times, September 17, 2025. Susan Monarez, the former head of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, who was ousted by Health Secretary RFK Junior amid a dispute over vaccine policy, will tell her story during a Senate hearing on Wednesday that promises to be a referendum on the RFK Junior leadership. Dr. Monarez will appear before the Senate Health Committee along with Dr. Houry, the CDC former chief medical officer, one of 3 top agency officials who quit after concluding they could no longer work for RFK Junior. The September 17, 2025 hearing will expose a rocky time at the Public Health Agency of America, which long has been a target of RFK Junior. In prepared testimony, Dr. Monarez and Dr. Houry accused RFK Junior of disregarding science and endangering the health of Americans. The hearing also comes on the eve of a 2-day meeting of the CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, an expert panel at the heart of the Dr. Monarez conflict with RFK Junior. Earlier this year, RFK Junior fired all 17 of the committee members and replaced them with some who share his skepticism of vaccines. In her prepared testimony, Dr. Monarez said she lost her job for holding the line on scientific integrity after refusing the RFK Junior demands to fire top CDC vaccine officials and accept without question the recommendation of the newly reconstituted Immunization Advisory Committee. She said she told RFK Junior that if he believed he could not trust me, he could fire me. Dr. Houry said RFK Junior repeatedly censored CDC science, politicized our processes, and stripped agency leaders of the ability to protect the health of the American people. Dr. Monarez is an infectious disease researcher and longtime government scientist. Dr. Monarez was the acting CDC director at the outset of the Trump administration when she was nominated for director. RFK Junior praised her, saying she had impeccable scientific credentials. Her removal less than a month after she was confirmed by the Senate stunned public health leaders and people in Washington. It also drew criticism of RFK Junior on Capitol Hill, including from 2 Republican colleagues of Dr. Cassidy, Senators Tom Tillis of North Carolina and John Barrasso of Wyoming, who is also a physician. According to prepared testimony of Dr. Monarez, her relationship with RFK Junior began to sour early last month, just days after her confirmation on July 29. On August 2, she wrote, she learned from news reports that experts serving as liaisons to the Vaccine Advisory Committee, including those from major medical societies, had been removed from its working groups. Then she heard concerns that the panel might alter the childhood vaccine schedule at its next meeting potentially. Without credible supporting data, that meeting is set for this Thursday and Friday. In Atlanta on August 8, a gunman opened fire on the CDC headquarters in Atlanta, killing a police officer. On August 19, Dr. Monarez said she received a directive from the RFK Junior office instructing her that she needed approval from the Trump political appointees before making policy and personnel decisions. 2 days later, she said she was told to return to Washington from Atlanta immediately, which would have meant missing the police officer memorial that she said was something I was not willing to do. On the morning of August 25, back in Washington, Dr. Monarez said RFK Junior demanded that she commit in advance to approving every recommendation by the advisory panel regardless of the scientific evidence. He also directed her to dismiss career officials responsible for vaccine policy without cause. She said she refused. 2 days later, the White House announced that it had fired her. 2A headlines. The New York Times, September 17, 2025. Air pollution caused by fossil fuel burning and air pollution caused by wood burning, including indoor residential wood burning. A Times investigation into Trump UAE and 2 giant deals. 5 takeaways. The New York Times, the climate change toll in Europe this summer, thousands of extra deaths. The New York Times, it is not just the US, the whole world has soured on climate politics. The New York Times, new research helps explain gas craters in Siberia. The New York Times, Robert Redford, a classic American ideal who escaped the mold. The New York Times, the many types of heroes of Robert Redford. The New York Times, San Francisco politician recalled over the closure of the Great Highway replaced by a park. The New York Times, Jerry of Ben and Jerry resigns, saying company has been silenced. The New York Times, repeat offender charged with threatening the lives of female judges. The New York Times, the rise of the so-called shadow docket of the Supreme Court. The New York Times, the Trump visit to Britain includes billions in new tech deals. The New York Times, California, the California environmental past confronts economic worries of the present. The New York Times, California, Trump versus universities. University of California leaders to meet as Trump increases pressure. The New York Times, consumer's backpack or briefcase. This backpack is better than a briefcase, but just as sophisticated. Reviews by Wirecutter consumers. Clothing, the best t-shirt I ever bought came from a Midwest strip mall. I tracked it down on Amazon. Reviews by Wirecutter consumers. Marathons, preventive medicine, exercise as marathons become more popular. Tour companies seize the opportunity. The New York Times, consumers phone, stop charging your phone to 100 and more tips to make your phone last longer. Reviews by Wirecutter consumers. Preventive medicine, can puzzles and games prevent dementia? The New York Times, consumers. Preventive medicine, castor oil benefits hair growth, skin health, and more. The New York Times, consumers. Preventive medicine, do-it-yourself cleaning products, please stop mixing baking soda and vinegar to make cleaning paste. Reviews by Wirecutter consumers. Preventive medicine, falling into the cynicism trap is bad for health, experts say. The New York Times, consumers. Preventive medicine, how the pursuit of perfect sleep can backfire. The New York Times, consumers. Preventive medicine, how to calm yourself down in 5 easy steps the New York Times Consumers Preventive Medicine How to Tackle Your To-Do List if you struggle. With executive functioning, the New York Times Consumers Preventive Medicine, the 3 best to-do list apps of 2025 reviews by Wirecutter. Consumers Preventive Medicine trapped in a ChatGPT spiral. The New York Times Consumers reading a reporter who looks for the books that make you tick. The New York Times Democrats opinion questions and answers a government shutdown is simply a counterproductive response to Trump. The New York Times Democrats opinion. The Trump economic magic trick is coming undone. The New York Times Human Interest Consumers Preventive Medicine volunteer puppy raisers work to tackle a service dog shortage. The New York Times Medicine and Science Consumers Preventive Medicine. How do Times health reporters choose experts? The New York Times Music. What was behind the David Bowie Geniuses archive holds the answers. The New York Times New Jersey Democrats toss-up race for NJ governor draws big money and a bright spotlight. The New York Times RFK Junior Trump actions. Surgeon General nominee pledges to divest from wellness interests. The New York Times RFK Junior vaccine denial. Fired CDC Director to testify about her clash with RFK Junior. The New York Times RFK Junior vaccine denial. Takeaways from the RFK Junior childhood health report. The New York Times Trump Federal Bureau of Investigation driver crashes car into FBI field office gate in Pittsburgh. The New York Times Trump versus Federal Reserve investors are bullish as a pivotal Fed decision looms. The New York Times Trump actions opinion. How to prevent our first AI president. The New York Times Trump economy. Is the economy as healthy as Trump claims? The New York Times Trump versus Federal Reserve. What to watch at the September meeting of the Federal Reserve. The New York Times Trump military retired admiral is sentenced to 6 years in prison for bribery. The New York Times Nepal. How the government of Nepal went up in smoke. The New York Times Trump UK visit. A stone skimming contest in Scotland is infiltrated by cheaters. The New York Times at home and on the seas. Trump expands use of American force. The New York Times. Has Britain gone too far with its digital controls? The New York Times Jimmy Fallon teases the Trump UK trip. The New York Times live updates. UK prepares royal welcome for Trump in second state visit. The New York Times. Most UK political leaders are cautiously welcoming Trump, not this one. The New York Times opinion. Our allies are asking why does Putin still own Trump? The New York Times opinion. Tina Brown when Trump visits King Charles III. The New York Times. The Trump second UK state visit draws protests. The New York Times quiz on UK state visit etiquette as Trump meets with Charles. The New York Times 2B headlines. The Guardian September 17, 2025 air pollution caused by fossil fuel burning and air pollution caused by wood burning including indoor residential wood burning. Guyana found huge oil reserves 10 years ago, so why are most people still poor? Global development then. Guardian human-made global warming caused 2 in 3 heat deaths in Europe this summer. Extreme heat. The Guardian. Robert Redford was a principled force for good, says reporter Bob Woodward, the author of All the Men of the President. The Guardian. The Guardian Climate Pledge 2025 Environment. The Guardian. UN tries to limit staff going to COP30 in Brazil due to high price of hotels. COP30. The Guardian. US Senator calls on big oil to disclose suspected lobbying over Trump. Plan to axe key climate rule. Environment. The Guardian. Young climate activists in court aim to stop the Trump pro-fossil fuel executive orders. U.S. News. The Guardian. Jerry of Ben and Jerry quits accusing Unilever of silencing social mission. Unilever. The Guardian. California lawsuit versus Trump. University of California students and faculty sue the Trump administration. Trump administration. The Guardian. Consumers fashion people give me a wide berth. My weird week of wearing shoulder pals toys. The Guardian. Georgia Supreme Court ends Fani Willis bid to reverse removal from Trump case. Fani Willis. The Guardian. Medicine and Science daily weight loss pill can help cut body weight by a 5th trial shows obesity. The Guardian. Medicine and Science long COVID link to heavier periods and risk of iron deficiency. Health. The Guardian. Minnesota-Minneapolis police say more than a dozen hurt in homeless encampment shootings. Minneapolis. The Guardian. Trump actions combat against human trafficking weekend revealed. Trump administration retreats on combating human trafficking and child exploitation. Trump administration. The Guardian. Top Democrat accuses Trump of dismantling efforts to prosecute sex crimes. Trump administration. The Guardian. Trump lawsuit versus the New York Times. Why has Trump filed a $15 billion lawsuit against the New York Times? Donald Trump. The Guardian. U.S. Congress GOP lawmaker pulls measure to allow Marco Rubio to revoke U.S. passports. Marco Rubio. The Guardian. Brazil. Bolsonaro ordered to pay damages for racist remarks in office. Brazil. The Guardian. Denmark to buy long-range precision weapons as PM warns Russia is testing us. Europe. Live. Germany main suspect in Madeleine McCann case released from German prison. Germany. The Guardian. Ukraine. Guardian view on the Trump-Ukraine strategy. Talking tough and doing very little is not working. Editorial. The Guardian. China. Everyone should be worried. Life in the crosshairs of the China Guam killer missiles. Guam. The Guardian. China. Trump celebrates TikTok deal as Beijing suggests U.S. app would use the China algorithm. China. The Guardian. Trump UK visit after the march of the far right on our streets. Londoners must show Trump we reject his politics of fear. Sadiq Khan. The Guardian. Donald Trump greeted by the King William and Kate after landing in Windsor. UK politics. Live images of Trump, Epstein, and Prince Andrew projected on Windsor Castle during Trump visit. Video. Donald Trump. The Guardian. It is not all lies with Trump. Sometimes he is unervingly honest. Arwa Madawi. The Guardian. Keir Starmer is betting everything on an America that does not exist anymore. Raphael Bear. The Guardian. The Trump tariffs have hurt tea exports to the U.S., says Fortnum and Mason Boss. Tariffs. The Guardian. 2C headlines. Other media. September 17, 2025 Iowa Democrat Caitlin Dre sworn in to Iowa Senate. RFK Junior vaccine denial. They are about to vote on the vaccines of your kids. 3 headlines about Trump, Kirk, and lack of gun control. Headlines. The New York Times. September 17, 2025 Trump, Kirk, and lack of gun control. RAWSEP view the mother of the alleged killer supplied the alleged killer with access to guns and proudly publicized The use of guns by the killer. There were school shootings and other gun violence before, during, and after the Kirk killing. From the article headline, A Note a Gun, Into the Conscience of the Mother led to an arrest in the Kirk killing. The New York Times. After the Kirk killing, Obama says the nation is in a political crisis. The New York Times. As Trump arrives in the UK, the right wing and far right of Europe claims Kirk as one of their own. The New York Times. Bondi prompts broad conservative Republican or far-right backlash after saying she will target hate speech. The New York Times. Opinion, the Kirk killing and our poisonous internet. The New York Times. Social platforms duck blame for inflaming divisions before the Kirk death. The New York Times. The plan to turn the Kirk murder into a left-wing crackdown. The New York Times. Trump invokes the Kirk killing in seeking to silence opponents on left. The New York Times. Headlines. The Guardian. September 17, 2025. Trump, Kirk, and lack of gun control. Inappropriate comments about the Kirk shooting lead to university firings. Kirk shooting. The Guardian. This country is going to fall on its face. There is nobody coming to save us. Boston punks dropkick Murphy's take on megapunk. The Guardian. The Kirk killing suspect charged with aggravated murder by Utah prosecutors. The Kirk shooting. The Guardian. How memes, gaming, and internet culture all relate to the Kirk shooting. Technology. The Guardian. Memes and nihilistic and jokes. The online world of the alleged killer of Kirk. Internet. The Guardian. Text plans and a confession. Prosecutor lays out startling details in the Kirk shooting. The Guardian. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro says leaders need moral clarity amid rising political violence. U.S. News. The Guardian. Evidence of Utah prosecutors indicates suspected motives of the Kirk alleged shooter. The Guardian. We must not let the shooting of Kirk become the Trump Reichstag. Fired David Van Raybrout. The Guardian. Pam Bondi faces right-wing backlash for saying she will target hate speech after Kirk killing. Trump administration. The Guardian. Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's Corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. RAWSEP view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove. International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.